Well, hello everyone. Excited to be opening up this new webinar. Today we have a very special guest, and the topic it's one that it's very current and very important topic. It's the main topic that we'll discuss today. It's the systematic approach on how luxury can strengthen control of its supply chains. It's a topic that has been key and has been emerging into the market for multiple reasons that we'll also be able to share with you today. But maybe as a first beginning of the session, we have quite of a fit agenda. So I'll go into actually introducing you first who I am and also actually who we have today here. So I'm Iris, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Renoon. We're a company based in Amsterdam, Milan, and Dubai. We've been working in this sector now for 5 years. We've seen how technology on one side can play a role, and we see also how it brings an important role into how we change the systemic approach that we're currently facing today. With us also, there's Sara Ongaro from our team. She's the Sustainability and Accounts Manager at Renoon. And our very special guest, which is Caterina Occhio. Caterina is an advisor at UNIDO and Global Board of World Fair Trade Organization. And with Caterina, we've been discussing this topic for a long time, and especially nowadays, because of also what is happening in the industry. So Caterina, I'll actually let you take it from here.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being with us today. My name, as Iris said, is Caterina Occhio. I've been working in sustainability field for quite some time, specialized in responsible supply chain. And some more background information of me, I've been working with several luxury houses in supporting their sustainability and ESG journey, and since recently I have joined the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, developing a new program called Fair Share that is focusing on making supply chain more fair. And I'm very happy that Renoon asked me to be a speaker in this webinar, and I hope that together today we could go through the journey that hopefully could lead to a more responsible supply chain. Now you'll be hearing from me the word responsible a lot in this in this hour, but it's a word that I like to use very much, and because it's as we probably going to see through this time together, it is responsible not only in the sustainability manner, also financially and economically, that the luxury companies start to take what happened in their supply chain in a very serious manner, try to treat it in a way that could assure a much stronger business case also for their sustainability strategy. So let's dive into it. If we could go to the next slide. I think that everybody knows what has been going on in the past year and a half inside, especially the Made in Italy supply chain. The latest episode is about Tod's, but has been touching upon several other luxury brands within the Made in Italy supply chain. And what is important to know is that fundamentally, this is the result of a system-level fragility. What we have been seeing, I mean, I've had the possibility to deep dive with some of this company into what happened, and most of the time, what has been seen is that authentically, the organization, the brands did not really know, or maybe didn't have enough instrument to know what was really going on deep down their supply chain. And it's not the brand is the real scandal, but it's all the blind spot that the actual system is clearly showing with all the scandals that have been happening. So in the next slides, we will try to approach what systemic failures in supply chains look like. Basically, what has been traditionally done up to now in overseeing the supply chain is clearly no longer enough. So what happened is that many brands still rely on, let's say, static audits, which means many of them are focusing on tier one, and which is very rarely where the real problem is, while the subcontracting chain, and as the least recent scandals point out, are in the oversight or very often are not even in control. So this opaque system that have been developing it's at the core of the very big risk that right now the luxury chain, the luxury brands are running. And when I say static audits, basically the way that have been conducted has somehow been standardized and has been displaying some malfunctioning that, when not addressed, do have a serious and do pose a serious governance risk. So the main message is that the way things have been managed in the supply chain do not capture the complexity of the supply chain. And if you can go to the next slide, this is something that in the changing legislation panorama cannot be overseen anymore. Several things have been happening at the European and Italian level, starting with the Italian legislation landscape. The 14th of October at the Senate, a new legislation, a new DDL has been brought forward that is trying to support a better due diligence in the supply chain. Now, this obligation in Italy are based on a legislation that called the Made in Italy law from the law 2006 or 2024, which introduces formal obligation for companies that use the Made in Italy label. Now, what is important to understand is that legislation can be divided, several legislation that have been now brought forward, can be divided into big groups. The mandatory internal due diligence, which is going to be obligatory through all tiers of the supply chain, including subcontracting, and a new national supplier registry, which is the one has been recently approved the 14th of October, which is put in place or will be put in place in order to incentivize the manufacturing company to follow more ethical and a responsible standard in their operation. Now, the important thing to understand about this registration of, let's say, responsible suppliers is that even if it's voluntary, a clear point is that liability is not voluntary. Obviously, we are in a gray period, in a gray zone where all this have to be clearly specified, and it will be more clear on the next 17th of November through the Tavolo della Moda here in Italy. But again, the fundamental point to understand is that even if a brand is only certified manufacturing their supply chain at all level, and meaning that their suppliers go through the certification process that the Italian are putting in place, this does not mean that if something goes wrong, the brand are not responsible for it. And so voluntary, mandatory, and liability that comes from that are three different issues that have to be clearly specified. Again, this will be more clear in the next months, but one thing that is clear is that what is happening in Italy at national level will have to go into the new legislation at European level that are going to come into forces from 2026 on. And I'm talking about the new digital product passport with the obligatory traceability, the CS Triple D with the due diligence that across human rights and environmental criteria, and all of them together, even if they do not always have obligatory measure to trace and being responsible for their subcontracting beyond tier one, are raising a lot of investors and consumer expectations. Now, this new legislative panorama, if we go to the next slides, poses a serious questions on how to have an internal control of the supply chain that assure a full spectrum visibility. Now, the responsibility, as we have seen from the legislation, goes beyond tier one. And the risk often lie exactly there, as we said before. Now, the fact that the opacity of the system of subcontracting and the way that the fact that the brands are not always in control of what is happening down the line is creating serious issues when they are not, because they are not visible. What happened right now is that even if brands have in place code of conduct that are signed by mostly the tier one of the production line, these kind of conducts and should be also applying to subcontracting are not always respected even by the same tier one. I'm sorry, maybe this sounds a bit complex, but it's because the system is complex. And if brands do not make sure that the code of conducts are respected and follow up how they are respected by the entire supply chain, the very clear damage that can happen to them is starting to show also in the way the legislators are also and the judicial system are also reacting to them. Now, the brands that have been already affected by the legal scandals and by the judicial scandals that have come afterwards have had a quite reactive position to that. Basically, they have not always, most of the cases, at least at the beginning 2024, they had a more of a dismissive attitude, that they were not even commenting on what was going on. But at the clear speed of the scandals right now, this is a behavior that cannot be sustained anymore. Now, in the next slide, it is important to understand how responsible supply chain is and can be done. It's not really a big secret, to be honest. We kind of know already the recipe. The problem can be that, again, it is difficult to overlook. It is difficult to make it visible and have a risk strategy that can prevent the problems of the judicial implication that can come from the scandals. But what is essential is that it is very important to have a supplier mapping that is clear, traceable. And the supplier mapping, again, goes through beyond tier one, and it touches also the sub-suppliers, the subcontractors, has to be kept alive, which means one cannot just rely on information that are not constantly updated. Now, the enforceable supplier codes and the enforceable code of conduct that have to be put into force have to be monitored in a way that allows real information to come into the system. Right now, the supplier codes enforcement is done through the control system of the audit. which is clearly, let's put it this way, the audit system that has been now implemented by the company has shown its fragility because it's basically done on announced audit. It is very often the auditors do not have enough time to control all the information available and have sometimes limited access to the information. So, and most importantly, when those information are collected, it is very difficult to follow up on the results of the audit in a systematic manner. So visibility becomes, and visibility of the information collected is also another big gray area. Grievance mechanism is a part that has been brought forward in several of the risk assessment, because assuring that the workers themselves have the opportunity anonymously to bring forward the problem before they become too big and too risky, it's always been overlooked. And most importantly, making sure that the strategy for responsible supply chain are part of the governance mechanism at the highest level of the company has always been a critical issue. Having somebody or someone that assures that everybody, also at the highest C-suite, is aware of what's going on down the supply chain can prepare and can make sure that these scandals and the problems are avoided, or at least try to minimize when they could appear. And data collection in all these cases, when it comes again to the mapping, to the auditing, to the grievance mechanism, and to the governance system to be put in place, is essential and becomes an important tool for communicating internally and externally what are the strategy of the brand. Now, in the next slide, what could be the role of strategic support is basically trying to understand that at the moment within large organization and within brands, the possibility to have a specific knowledge and a specific understanding of how to build a responsible supply chain that minimize the risk is not always available. What will be a roadmap to avoid the issues related to unresponsible supply chain would be, for sure, design some traceability framework, making sure that all the organization can trace what's happening down the supply chain, aligning the purchasing practices with the due diligence obligation. Again, due diligence obligations, and that can be also voluntary and can be put in place in order to create a system that prevents the risk that prevent risk to become too serious to be handled. An essential other part would be to train the internal teams in recognizing the risk and act before they become too difficult to manage, preparing for audits, and most importantly, for disclosure of the audits and the results of the audits and possibly the follow-up of the audits, and making sure also that the suppliers are effectively engaged. The new system that has been brought forward from the Italian government that requires the registration of, let's say, the good suppliers, the responsible suppliers, could definitely become an important source for information, but engaging with them directly in the collection of information and in the understanding what could be the problem they can face is an essential role that also the brands can play. Now, in the next slide, what we have also to make sure that happens is that the digital traceability tools can help in the process of building a responsible supply chain. And what's going to happen right now is that the technology behind the traceability of supply chain is already available and should and could be used to create a system where not just the reputation of the brands is at stake, but also the entire manufacturing and made in Italy system beyond, of course, the scandals of the brands. I will let Renoon bringing forward more detailed information on how the technology that they have been developing could support this process.
Thank you, Caterina. I'll jump on this then. So, going to the Renoon role in this new supply chain model, it's really important to mention that with Renoon, we are enabling full visibility on the supply chain and also the possibility to integrate all this information then for final consumers into digital passport. And the key thing of mapping the supply chain through a platform and also, first of all, collecting the data that the brand, the company already has within the company itself, is that there's also an AI engine which helps with data interoperability and also data validation so that the platform is on one side really easy to operate, which is important to not overcomplicate the processes that the brand has already in place, and also in terms of saving time, of course. So the solution in itself has digital passports at core, and then on top of that, all the information that are collected from the supply chain can then be used for digital passport, but also for impact calculation or either reporting. And on top of this, we do also focus then on creating value to the digital passport. But I think the key thing to mention today is the importance of building connected, transparent supply chain. So the traceability tools like Renoon can help mapping beyond tier one, which is the common information that brands already have, of course. And this is done also to, on one side, as I was mentioning also before, integrate then all the data that are collecting on digital passport and going at product level traceability, but also to enable supplier risk assessment, supply chain risk assessment, and ESG scoring. And of course, then the dashboard can also allow to have an overview of the status quo with with insights and overview and reports. And so that's also a key moment for preparing for digital passport, the one in which we stand now. So all the data collection work and the traceability that we do is all useful for many regulation. One of these is ESPR with digital passports. Briefly, digital passport touch base different teams within the company and different activities as well. And the key things in terms of data points, first of all, there's a decision that needs to be made on data carriers that should be then connected to the system. Then there's also this data collection that I've just mentioned. So either collecting the data that integrating the data that the company already has, plus the data from the supply chain that may be missing. And then on the other side, the platform steps in for data structuring and data validation, of course, in order to be sure that the data that then are published on DPPs are consistent and, proved by documentation. And data publication, of course, stands at three level, I will say, because the regulation says that digital passport should be accessible on the physical product, first of all, but then also on all the product pages online on the e-commerce. So either the e-commerce of the brand itself, but also on the different retailers, stores. So also there should be accessible. And then the third level is the publication on DPP, the DPP registry at the European level. So there are different layers of publications. And what we've seen also is that all these supply chain data collection and the publication of this data onto digital passport can also actually give back value in the sense of also even like pre-purchase and also post-purchase. Pre-purchase, like giving more transparency, for example, on the product pages, and gives consumers more information and brings to uplifts. And also post-purchase, of course, it can be like it can give back value while, for example, connecting to upsale or other engagement activities. So yeah, these are the key things. But to wrap up, Caterina, I leave you the floor about next steps.
So, as I said, we are in a gray zone when it comes to the legislation, especially for all the companies that have a production chain and majority in Italy. But what's very important to understand is that the steps for building a responsible supply chain are clear. There is a need to just put them into practice. We would be happy to support you in that. But the first one is certainly strategically assess and mapping the risk within your supply chain. There are several tools at disposals, and the digital infrastructure can support the visibility. And in order to do that, there has to be a clear understanding that the governance, the monitoring, the reporting has to be an ongoing exercise. Now, clearly, if you are here, if you're still here with us today, it's because you do recognize that the current system will not get you where the brand and where the regulation are heading. The good news is that you don't need to do it all at once. The good news is that there is still time for adapting and for assessing and clearly modifying your supply chain strategy in order to be ready for the next upcoming regulations, and also be scandal proof, if you want, if you allow me to say that. What we would like maybe to propose is the possibility to have a readiness assessment. If you could go to the next slide. And Renoon has developed a tool to assess the risk in your supply chain. It's a very simple exercise that could just give you an idea and understanding of how high in the scale of risk your actual procedures or practices lead your brand to, and could be a good understanding on how to move forward strategically and sustainably. Because it's definitely an opportunity with the right combination of governance and technology to make responsibility your own advantage. And this can, of course, is confidential and tailored, and but so feel free to go ahead and use it if you want to have it. And I'm sure that further down the line, we will be happy to bring you even more in-depth seminars, also considering the new legislative development that will be happening in the next month. So this could also be a way for us to continue the conversation, not just when you have been assessing your supply chain, but also bringing forward what will be the next development.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Caterina. Thank you so much, also Sara. I think it's great to see that indeed with a systemic approach, what it's happening, and what I'm also hearing from today's great intervention from Caterina, that she also has been speaking about at Business of Fashion. You can read also her latest op-ed there about this topic. It's that it's within a system where there's no infrastructure and no rules. It's of course difficult to operate. So what is happening is that rules are coming and at a very fast pace, and there's an infrastructure ready and available for companies to build on top. I would say we can open up to any questions if there is available. Sarah, maybe we can also leave in the chat the link to the DPP readiness in case somebody wants to also, of course, fill it out from desktop. You'll also receive after this webinar an email containing that link as well as a replay of this webinar. If anybody has any questions, you can drop them here. And we can open up indeed to Caterina and Sarah. Otherwise, we can also take it from there, and also happy to have one-on-one conversations with you regarding the topic. I think we're good. We don't have questions yet, probably after the assessment. So yeah, I want to thank everyone again. I think, Sarah, we've covered everything. Caterina, we don't have anything else to share. So yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Thank you.
A
Bye.
big
Thank
thank you
you.
to Caterina. Ciao. See you.